Okay, I guess I'll do one more before we upload, because I've been talking to myself on this nice long walk. I actually wrote some notes on the post that will go up tonight. The Kohler Times has not answered any of the questions today. They were posted on various public forums, Pinterest, Blogger, multiple public forums, and they have refused to answer the questions. I actually looked up possible criminal charges against the editorial board of the Kohler Times. All of your names are on there, on the post. And this would be, first of all, I put some links, which it is indeed a crime to obstruct the public right of way. There are various links I put on there. Besides the fact that any progressive community would not want one rogue employee, even in this roadway here, to just put up a roadblock, and then the public would question, wait a minute, it's blocking the road to my house or whatever. Yes. I don't know that brother. He's a new guy. And he might have thought I was videotaping him. But either way, so the world would know that Corpus Christi will actually advocates for and permits one rogue employee to put up barriers, possibly without any authorization, to block off a major road, and the Kohler Times and others will defend that and call for a prize. Now, the criminal liability that the editorial board might face because what they did was called obstruction of justice, meaning this: if a local government official, whether mayor, a police chief, or whatever, if they're doing an investigation of a possible criminal violation, and then the media actually would collude in any way to put pressure on that government official to drop the investigation, which might be criminal, then that's called obstruction of justice. So it's possible that the names that are at the top of this list of the post committed a criminal act. But the thing that really upsets me in watching what's gone on here for all these years is how the local media, Kohler Times and others, how they have turned a blind eye to corruption, particularly related to drug trafficking, with those that are in high positions in this community. And the only reason I can imagine they've allowed that particular corruption to go unchecked is because they feel maybe it's part of, you wouldn't want to see a Hispanic person that has risen the ranks, which is a good thing, to take a downfall. But when you cover up for a lot of that stuff, particularly, and they've only done it with Hispanic leadership, they covered up to a degree that in the end result of that, it affects every kid, every Hispanic kid, every Anglo kid, every black kid that has gone astray, wound up in a life of drug addiction and all these things. When you have, and I've seen you do that, you have made racial decisions to fight against any exposure of that particular type of corruption within the legal community, within the judges here. And it's well known. And that's what irks me. And then when you say we're a voice, we question churches, we ask for their salaries, we do all these things because we want to make sure. How can you even deem yourselves in that position? Now you're facing possible criminal charges yourself. I believe a case could be made that you should be brought up on criminal charges, the editorial board, whether or not you had collusion with Mexican drug cartels in any of your coverage of things over these last 15 years in this city. It's beyond me where there have been multiple sources that have named names, not only me but others, that have given documentation, and all of that is out there. And I never could figure out why those particular high people, who are all Hispanic, have gotten away with stuff that has affected the lives of kids in this community, which is primarily illegal drug trafficking. And I could just imagine that some feel that that's the price that the younger generation is going to have to pay, because the agenda of some people is we want to see the rise of a particular race. It would be wrong and it would be unjust for me to defend white officials simply because I felt they were white, or for me to attack Hispanic officials simply because they're Hispanic. But you have done that. You have done that. And every citizen in this community would know if Nelda Martinez simply questioned a rogue employee of why would they block a particular road, none of you would have written that criticism. None of you would have laid the possible death of a baby because some mother is strolling him at the foot of Nelda Martinez. So even the white liberals on the Kohler Times, all of you are unable to do justly and righteously. And how dare you ever contact a church, a ministry, an organization, and say, we are requesting your financial records because somehow we, the Kohler Times and the media, have a position where we are going to go out and investigate Christians. And look at the debacle that you have engaged in. I know you have covered up for the judges that are involved in illegal activity for years out here. And even my street friends that saw that, they were like surprised. And they would say, how does that happen? It's because of what I just explained. You have a mentality in South Texas, and many who are Hispanic or even white liberals, they believe that to challenge Hispanic leadership, if they have crossed the line, is somehow going against their agenda for the rise of a particular race into power. Even the Blake Farenthold, this might be one of my homeless friends, even the Blake Farenthold congressman from Corpus Christi, I did call for him to resign. And then the Kohler Times later, initially they did not call for him to resign, then later they called for him to resign, then they kind of been going after him to the point where almost like they want to destroy the man, in the sense he's going to obviously be out of office, but then he was going to pay back the $84,000 sexual harassment suit. He don't have the money, so he's going to maybe mortgage his house. So, but I've never seen them go after that when Hispanic leadership has crossed the line. They usually, and then you're trying to say, wait a minute, if Blake Farenthold was Hispanic and white people in this community said Blake Farenthold should resign, but if he was Hispanic, the Kohler Times would have done a complete, this might be one of my buddies, the Kohler Times might have done a complete expose how whites are going after Hispanic. But when it's on the other foot, they just don't see their bias. I don't know who those guys were. It looked like one of my old friends from back in the day, but I'm not sure. The other thing I'll mention, and whenever I talk about the different criminal stuff that's going on, the other thing that I talk about is trying to steer them out of that, meaning to take a different path. And whether you are associating yourself with whatever ethnicity, and you're in a particular group that's going the wrong way, I try to just show a better way, regardless of what group it is. But why? Why does the media here turn a blind eye when that type of activity, which is basically what I explained, the Mexican drug cartels, when there's influence in high Hispanics all the way to the judges of this community, and they cover that. They cover it up. The only explanation is it's a racist thing. And those same individuals believe they're doing some type of a service to the community. They believe that. I believe it's time in the country, as well as in this community, that the media be held accountable. I believe we have the right to ask, what are you doing with your money that you're taking from the public, being you're part of this community? Your salaries. We should have the right to say, we deem they might be too high. We want openness in media, reporters, and news people, just like you want it in Christian organizations within Corpus Christi. But you seem to, I remember the late Tim Russert, and I used to watch Meet the Press, but Tim Russert was always known as like he died young, sadly, years ago, but he'd go after you. There's a particular case, I remember this, I forget the details of it, but he was caught lying. It was something. And boy, was he irate. He was irate because he was caught lying about a particular thing. It was big at the time, 8 years back or whatever. But I remember, but as a media hound dog, he did a good job. He went after people night after, every Sunday on the Sunday Meet the Press. But when the tables were turned, he basically said, as media, how dare you ever question us? How dare you ever call our opinions into question? They believe that they could play a role of righteousness within a community while at the same time not being righteous themselves. And that's the height of hypocrisy. I believe those within this local community for all those years who have covered up for particular criminal activity among those in authority that has contributed to the drug crisis that not only we have in this city but all across this country. You have aided and abetted in that crisis. And when I see a white judge, Guy Williams, or a white judge, Tom Greenwell, shot in his chambers, and I see there's really some of the things that, the way they covered that, but then to know that there are Hispanic judges that have a very long history out here, and they cover that up. You have no voice for righteousness in this community for what you have done. You might face criminal charges called obstruction of justice because you tried to get a city official to stop investigating what might lead to a crime, which I already added those links. So yes, this will be the last one. We gave the Caller Times due notice today to respond to the questions that we as the community have, and they have not answered. They have not answered whether or not in some of their editorial meetings they had collusion with cartels to not report a certain thing. They've not answered that. Covering of all the cases I talked about, the Celis and Vinales and all those things, why they seem to shy away from certain things, but they don't answer. But they'll be out tomorrow questioning some Christian organization, investigating some type of a thing that they're trying to shine the light on. But we don't even know your own activities. What are you engaged in? How much money are you receiving as salaries from your jobs? None of that you deem that we should know. Like the Tim Russell, how mad he was that he was caught in a lie. That's what it was. He was caught in a lie. Some famous case. But yet week after week after week, he'd catch political figures in lies. That was his job. But one time that it was turned on him, he was enraged. Like, how dare you ever question the media? Who do you think you are, public? to question us. We are the media. If we cover up for Hispanic judges with a history and a reign of drug cartel connections, and everybody here that's been here for any amount of time knows that. You say, but that's what we've decided to do. And in those decisions, we're corrupt to the core. But don't you ever question our corruption, because we're going to be at the typewriter, if you will, the computer tomorrow, investigating everybody else that we deem needs to be investigated. But how dare you ever question us? That's the Kohler Times.